Hello students of class 10. Today I am going to teach you a story that is there in your syllabus, All Summer in a Day by Ray Bradbury. So Ray Douglas Bradbury was an American fantasy, science fiction, horror and mystery fiction author. So this particular story, All Summer in a Day, is set on the planet Venus where the sun shines for only 2 hours once every 7 years. It opens on the day that the sun is due to make its appearance once again. Margaret has come from Earth, so she knows what the sun looks like, but that is not the case with the other children. So I am not going to tell you the gist of the story right now. For that, we need to know what is there in the entire story. So let's begin with the story now. Ready? Ready. Now? Soon. Do the scientists really know? Will it happen today? Will it? So now as the story starts, we come to know that the children are ready to see the sun. So that's why they have begun the story with these words. Ready, ready, now, soon. So they are expecting the sun to come out any moment. So that's why they are all getting geared up and all getting ready to see the sun. Do the scientists really know? Will it happen today? Will it? So they are still not sure whether the rain will be pouring that day, because in planet Venus all the time it rained and they could get to see the sun only once in 7 years. So that day also they were not very sure whether the sun would be popping up. So in a very unsure tone, the children are having a conversation that whether the sun will be coming out even that day. So look, see for yourself. The children pressed to each other like so many roses, so many weeds, intermixed, peering out for a look at the hidden sun. So now they begin to tell each other, why don't you see it for yourself? So they pressed to each other like so many roses, so many weeds intermixed. So many roses, so many weeds intermixed tells us that there were varieties of children. So many types of children were standing there. And why were they standing? Peering out for a look at the hidden sun. So they were all there in order to see the sun, just to have a glimpse of the sun for which they had been waiting since such a long time. But to their disappointment, what happened? It rained. So they were hoping to see the sun, but unfortunately, it started raining. So that was the end of their excitement and a lot of disappointment for the children, because again it started raining. It had been raining for 7 years, thousands upon thousands of days, compounded and filled from one end to the other with rain. So what happened was, it had been raining for 7 years and thousands of days, compounded and filled from one end to the other with rain. So it was raining continuously for 7 years. So that's why they have given there thousands and thousands of days. And it had been raining ever since in that particular region. With the drum and gush of water, with the sweet crystal fall of showers, and the concussion of storms so heavy, they were tidal waves come over the islands. So this is how the writer Ray Bradbury has described the rain, with the words such as drum and gush of water, with the sweet crystal fall of showers, and the concussion of storms so heavy. So even the storm was so heavy in that place. It was just like a concussion. Concussion means a temporary unconsciousness. So that is how the storms also came upon that place. So heavy. It was almost like a concussion. There were tidal waves come over the islands. So because of the heavy rainfall, so many things happened there. So many activities took place there. And this is how it rained for thousands and thousands of days there in that particular planet. So the children had all gathered there to see the sunshine, but to their disappointment, again it started raining. So what happened as a result of the rain? 1,000 forests had been crushed under the rain. So thousands of forests had been crushed under that heavy rainfall and grown up 1,000 times to be crushed again. So what happened? Because of the tremendous amount of rainfall there, the forest again grew in a larger number, and in lots and lots of forests grew there because of the rainfall, but to be crushed again. So again under the rainfall they would be crushed. And this was the way life was forever on the planet Venus. And this was the schoolroom of the children of the rocket men and women who had come to reigning world to set up civilization and live out their lives. And this was the way of life forever on the planet Venus. So this was how life continued on the planet Venus. This is how the children led their lives there. And this is how life continued there. And this was the schoolroom of the children of the rocket men and women. So this particular room was the schoolroom of the children of the rocket men. Rocket men here means the scientists. So these children were the children of the scientists who had come there to a reigning world to set up civilization and live out their lives. So these children of the scientists, they had come there just to live their lives there. And see what they had to face. They had to face continuous rainfall. So one more disappointment for the children that day, that they could not see the sun. Now what they said? It's stopping, it's stopping. Yes, yes. So now the children again began to feel very excited and they said, oh, it's stopping, the rain is stopping. And they began to be very excited. Margaret stood apart from them, from these children. Could ever remember a time when there wasn't rain and rain and rain. So Margaret, one of the children, just stood apart from all the other children because she had come from the planet Earth and not a very long time ago. So she stood apart from all these children. Who could ever remember a time when there wasn't rain and rain and rain? So Margaret did not want to mix up with these children and she just stood apart from them. Because these children, they could not ever remember a time when there wasn't rain in that particular planet. They were all 9 years old, and if there had been a day 7 years ago when the sun came out for an hour and showed his face to the stunned world, they could not remember. So what happened was, she just stood apart, and all these children, they were 9 years old, and even if there had been a day 7 years ago when the sun came out for an hour and showed its face to the stunned world, they could not recall. So these children, even if they had seen the sun 7 years ago, if they had seen the sun, they could not recall what it was like because they were very small. They were just 2 years old. So they could not recall what the sun looked like. But Margaret had come recently to the planet Venus, so she knew what the sun looked like. Whereas the other children, they could hardly remember what the sun looked exactly like. Sometimes at night, she heard them stir in remembrance, and she knew they were dreaming and remembering gold or a yellow crayon or a coin large enough to buy the world with. So sometimes at night she heard them just stir in remembrance, and she knew that they were thinking of the sun like a gold or a yellow crayon or a coin that was large enough to buy the world with. She knew they thought they remembered a warmness. So she thought that they remembered a warmness like a blushing in the face, in the body. So that is what Margaret thought, that they remembered something about the sun. They remembered a warmness of the sun, like a blushing in the face because of the heat of the sun, in the body, in the arms and legs and trembling hands. So this is what Margaret thought. Margaret thought that these children remembered at least something about the sun, the warmth of the sun, the blushing in the face and the body and the arms and the legs and the trembling hands. And she even thought that these children remembered that the sun was just like a gold coin or a yellow crayon. She thought all this. But then they always awoke to tatting drum. So they always awoke to tatting drum, the rain drops, the endless shaking down of clear bead necklaces upon the roof. So always they woke up to the sound of the rain on the rooftop. Always, every day they woke up to that. The walk, the gardens, the forest, and the dreams were gone. So every day they woke up to the same situation. The rain falling down upon the roof, the walk, the gardens, the forest, and their dreams were shattered. So every day these children woke up hoping that they would be seeing the sun. But to their disappointment, what they always got to hear was the rainfall, and they could see only the rain falling upon everywhere, and the dreams were completely shattered. All day yesterday they had read in class about the sun, about how like a lemon it was and how hot. So just the day before in the class they had read about the sun. And what had they read about the sun? That it looked like a lemon and it was very, very hot. And they had written small stories or essays or poems about it. So they had even written stories or essays or poems about it. So what Margaret had written? I think the sun is a flower that blooms just for an hour. That was Margaret's poem, read in a quiet, still voice in the still classroom while the rain was falling outside. So Margaret had written, I think the sun is a flower that blooms for just an hour. So Margaret had written that poem and she read that in a quiet voice in the still classroom while the rain was falling outside. So just the day before, children had given their description about what the sun looked like. So they had written essays, poems about the sun. And Margaret had written there, I think the sun is a flower that blooms for just an hour. So she read that in a very, very quiet voice. And the rain was still falling outside. Ah, you didn't write that, protested one of the boys. I did, said Margaret, I did. William, said the teacher. So one of the boys named William, he protested and he said, no, you didn't write that poem. And Margaret said, no, I did. I myself have written that poem. And the teacher started shouting, William! But that was yesterday. Now the rain was slackening and the children were crushed in the great thick windows. Where's the teacher? She'll be back. She'd better hurry, we'll miss it. So now that day they were expecting to see the sun. So the teacher was missing. So now one of the children said, where's the teacher? She'd better hurry up, otherwise she will miss seeing the sun. They turned on themselves like a feverish will, all tumbling spokes. Margot stood alone. She was a very frail girl who looked as if she had been lost in the rain for years. So everybody started pushing and pulling each other just to have a look at the sun, whereas Margaret stood all alone. And she was a very frail girl, thin and delicate girl, who looked as if she had been lost in the rain for years, and the rain had washed out the blue from her eyes and the red from her mouth. So she looked very pale, delicate, fragile, and she looked as if she had been lost in the rain for years, and the rain had washed out the blue from her eyes and the red from her mouth. So it looked as if she had been drenched fully by the rain, and the color from her body also got washed away. So Margaret looked very, very plain, and she looked very, very pale. So this is how Margaret has been described, and the yellow from her hair. So even that yellow color from her hair had been fully discolored. She was looking pale, and she was looking very, very fragile, and she was looking weak. She was an old photograph dusted from an album. So she looked like an old photograph that had been dusted from an album, whitened away, and she spoke at all her voice would be a ghost. Now she stood, separate, staring at the rain and the loud, wet world beyond the huge glass. So she just looked like an old photograph dusted from an album, all whitened away, and she spoke at all her voice would be a ghost. And she stood separate, just looking at the rain and the wet world beyond the huge glass. So this is how Margaret has been described by the author Ray Bradbury. Because of the look of Margaret, because of her appearance, she was looking very, very pale, and all the colors gone from her body and her face, and she has been described in this particular manner by the author.